Donnie from the Philomath Montessori School, and I recently learned that one of my wonderful students was interested in hearing some true stories about Native Americans. And I too am so interested in Native Americans. And whenever I travel, I always want to learn about the Native Americans from that area and how they used to live. It fascinates me. There are so many different groups of Native Americans that live here in North America that I couldn't talk about all of them. So I'm choosing just one group. I'm choosing the Kalapuya. The Kalapuya are a group of Native Americans whose homeland is right here in the Willamette Valley. It reaches from the coast mountains. Those are the mountains that we drive over when we're going to the coast. Their homeland reached from the coast mountains across the Willamette Valley to the Cascade Range of mountains. Those are the mountains we go over if we're going to go east, if we're going towards Bend or Mount Bachelor. So between those mountain ranges, that was all their land, and all the way north to the Columbia River, and all the way south to the Umpqua River. It was a huge area. It was really the entire Willamette Valley. The Kalapuya have lived here in this area for over 14,000 years. That is an unimaginably long time. I asked my husband, how long do you think the Kalapuya have lived here? And he guessed 3,000, 4,000 years. Much longer. 14,000 years. The Kalapuya still live here today. Long ago, before the coming of other people, when the Kalapuya were the only people living here, and other Native American tribes, they all lived very closely to nature. They were hunter-gatherers, which meant they got everything they needed from hunting animals and gathering plants. The Kalapuya lived in families, which consisted of a man, his wives, and their children. Several families would band together to form a village. People would live in the village all year round. It was a permanent village. But in the spring and summer, smaller groups would leave and go elsewhere to hunt, to fish, and to gather plants for their food and for basket-making materials. The Kalapuya women made fantastic, beautiful, and useful baskets out of things from nature, grasses and bark and vines. The men hunted and fished. They waged war. They made tools. And they made canoes. The women hunted for plants. They hunted and gathered plants. These plants were the main source of their food. The women set up all the traveling camps, and the women prepared and processed and preserved all the food. The women took care of the children primarily, and they made all the wonderful baskets. The Kalapuya did keep people as slaves. They stole people from other groups of Native Americans. The people that were enslaved were made to fetch the firewood and the water, and these were never-ending chores. There was always firewood that needed to be gathered and always water that needed to be brought back to the village. In addition to those chores, they did other chores side by side with the people who owned them. A slave could buy her freedom if she gathered enough wealth, if she had enough things. She could buy her freedom. Or someone else could buy freedom for an enslaved person. For example, if I were enslaved and someone wanted to marry me, they could buy my freedom, and then I would be free to marry that person. There were special religious leaders in the Kalapuya, and they were believed to have the power to see into the future and to heal the sick. There was always a chief. Generally, the man who had the most wealth, the most valuable things, was made chief. And it was his job to help people settle their squabbles and arguments and disagreements. And it was his responsibility to provide the food for the feasts. Now, sadly, when other people that were not Native Americans, came here to the Willamette Valley, they brought with them diseases. The people that came here were used to these diseases, and their bodies knew how to fight them off. They had immunity to these diseases. But the Kalapuya did not. Their bodies had never been exposed to these diseases. Their bodies had not learned how to fight them off. They had no immunity. And many of them died of these diseases that the new people brought. Often, entire villages died, leaving the village completely empty of life. The Kalapuya that did survive these diseases were forced off their land, the land that they had occupied for 14,000 years. And they were forced to go to a new area of land called a reservation, a land that they did not know and a land that they were not used to. On this reservation, the Kalapuya were not the only Native Americans there. There were other groups of Native Americans who were the enemies of the Kalapuya. And all of these people were forced to live together. It must have been very, very difficult. Conditions on the reservation were poor. Sanitation was poor, which meant it wasn't very clean. And there was very little health care available, very few doctors and nurses and medicines. And so on the reservation, again, many of the Kalapuya people died. Here's another pretty picture I wanted to show you of a Kalapuya woman. You can see they cared a great deal about beauty. Look at all the decoration. And the Kalapuya people still care about beauty. Today there is a community of about 4,000 people of Kalapuya descent. And they are proud of the ways of their people. And they are proud of all their languages. And they are trying to keep these ways alive. And they are teaching their children their languages so that this way of life and these languages and this culture, this Kalapuya culture, does not disappear completely. This woman is keeping the Kalapuya culture alive. You see how she has made herself a costume just like her ancestors wore. The Kalapuya people come together to celebrate and to make sure that their culture and their ways of life live on. thank you so much, my friend, for asking about Native Americans and giving me this opportunity to tell you a true story about the Kalapuya. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.